Thank you for watching this Last Mile Profits video.
What is a Paczkomat Plus? Keep watching to find out more.
Last Mile Profits is brought to you by Parcel Pending by Quadient. Hello everyone. You've probably noticed there's a slightly different face today, and although Gregor may be new to you, he's the guy behind the scenes. He's our producer, and because today Gary couldn't make it, he's kindly agreed to step in. And even more importantly, he's got a really cool topic. Gregor, do you want to share the topic that you actually picked up on? Because I think it's pretty cool.
Well, I'm not a fan of rage baiting, Marek, but from time to time, there are certain topics that touch a nerve. And if I can utilize those, why not? And of course, one of the things that I've seen that you are not a fan of are refrigerated lockers. And lo and behold, I walked past my local refrigerated locker, which must admit I have never used, and I've seen it has a new look. It has now been rebranded Paczkomat Plus by InPost. I've shared some of the photos with you, and I'd like to know whether you think there is a chance of InPost resurrecting that concept, or if it is simply a dead end. So what do you think, Marek?
Well, Gregor, you're absolutely right. When I hear refrigerated lockers, I actually become quite hot and the debate becomes quite heated. And seriously speaking, though, I think it's very, very hard to get a tenable business case out of refrigerated lockers. The whole process, the chill chain, the machine itself, and when I say the machine, the cost of buying the machine, the cost of keeping the machine, because refrigeration costs money. One could also add certain ecological elements of that, make it really, really difficult. So I'm not a big fan. Perhaps if they were to be installed at scale as part of some wider process, they might make sense. But no one's done that yet. I've never seen anybody make money out of refrigerated lockers at scale. And therefore, I am quite skeptical.
Yeah, I can understand, obviously. I suppose from InPost perspective, they already have these lockers there on the ground, and they'll be really wanting to get these full. They'll want capacity ramped up, and they're obviously going to be doing something here in order to give them a second chance. And by looking at some of the marketing material on the surface of the locker, looking at the photos, we can see that there's different segments that they're targeting. We can see that the pharmaceutical sector is one. We can see that fresh items is another. We've even seen things like there was a laptop on there. Maybe there are batteries that need to be stored at a particular temperature. And also one of the interesting ones was the meal kits, which have kind of rocketed in popularity in recent years, with people having specific lunches and diets and having meals sent to them. So perhaps by targeting all of these segments, InPost might be hoping to have capacity to a level where it is actually financially viable. But the journey looks to be really complex.
The issue I've got, Greg, and you're right, there's some very interesting use cases, and particularly as you rightly pointed out, the meal kits, or whatever the right term in English for them is, are becoming popular. And it's actually quite cool because rather than leaving those kits, as is typically the case, on someone's doorstep, putting them in a secure and refrigerated location is great. The key issue will always come back to the fact, how many of these machines are there? Honestly, I don't know, but I would imagine we're talking in the big picture, if they've got 26 or 27,000 parcel lockers today, then how many probably they've got as a percentage of a relatively small amount of these refrigerated lockers. And for them to make any sense at all, they have to be available at scale. Either this is part of some kind of new test and attempt to pilot, but then the machines, and this will be interesting, Gregor, because if you found one in your neck of the woods, then the machines would have to be close by. So it'd have to be several machines in a fairly, I would say, narrow geographic area in order to test them. Or there could be some plan or idea to integrate it with a wider infrastructure that, is supplemented by these machines. I don't know. I think the use cases that they've added are about as good as it gets. And, pharmaceuticals, high value where temperature is important, the meal kits, generally fresh items. But again, I think the elephant in the room is how many of these machines they're going to have. Have they got something wider than the industry segments themselves? Have they got something that will make this work in terms of partnership or some big strategic picture? That's the question.
One of the things that I am curious about is simply the consumer demand. I mean, is this something that consumers are interested in? Because if you don't have that, then there's no point whatsoever. So you'd be looking at whether there are items that, consumers would want stored in these lockers. I mean, I'm off the top of my head, I'm thinking about maybe some of the boutique delicatessen items that might only be available in a specific shop on the other side of Warsaw, for example, and you might want to get some cured meats or artisan cheeses or whatever sent, and then it's stored in the locker, and that that's going to be safe. The other thing that we're seeing a lot now, in fact, I saw the other day in my hometown of Wrocław that Żabka have started their own delivery service. And obviously that's quite labor intensive. So could it be far less, or it would be far less labor intensive to have deliveries from convenience stores or supermarkets to those lockers rather than at home? Yeah. So do you think that there's potential volumes there to make it viable?
I think that's a good case. I think where it might work is if a locker, a refrigerated locker, was located next to a point of sale which maybe isn't open 24/7, or in some way becomes an access point to the products, high value products, exactly the ones you've mentioned, all those sort of items, that could make sense. But however we look at it, Gregor, I think that the devil is in the detail. What is the use case? What is the plan? We don't know that. Maybe somebody from the InPost team would like to comment below and share a little bit of the secret. Is there some wider picture? Because it could be that actually there's a very clever plan behind it all.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's the big deal. And the Paczkomat Plus remarketing of it as opposed to a Lodówkomat or a refrigerated parcel locker that it was called before kind of hints that these lockers might have other functionalities other than simply being able to control the temperature. So that's certainly something to look at. Obviously, we saw that they'd installed defibrillators on some of the lockers as well. There was a press release about that. But, could they bring other functionalities to these lockers besides just the temperature control? And what could those be? That's what's going to be interesting to see.
Absolutely. I think, Gregor, let's see whether somebody from InPost will come back with some interesting insights. But I think, if it is just a remodeling of the old Lodówkomat or whatever they were called idea, then I'm skeptical. If there's something behind it, well, hey, I'm interested as well to find out more.